please welcome Mac Perelstein, who will be our moderator. Max is the managing partner of Sole Source Consultants, a communication strategy firm focused on the building product industry. Please join me in also welcoming Barry Wood, Vice President of Marketing for Woods Power Grip, Jerry Nudi, owner of Ergo Robotic Solutions, and Chip Olson, Head of USA Sales for Quattrolifts. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to Express Learning. This is a wonderful panel. We have some of the top minds in our industry when it comes to handling glass and handling it in the field, handling it in the shop. So to me, as a glass guy, I really, really love what these gentlemen and their companies do because it makes a tremendous difference on the bottom line of the companies you're in, your company, this industry, and so on. So I'm going to start off with an easy one for you guys. Why is it so important that companies should be looking to improve their glass handling right out of the gate? I mean, why should they look at equipment that you're showing on the floor today? Go ahead, Barry, you can start.
That's a good question, I guess. It's not one I was really prepared for. I think that safety for us is a big issue, and it's something that we focus on every time we design a lifter, safety and ease of use. And what we want to do is take the load off the backs of the worker and put it on the machine, on the crane, and make their hardest job to turn the screws to fasten it in.
Perfect. Chip?
Yeah, that's the main reason Quattrolifts, the owner of Quattrolifts, got into this industry. He was a chiropractor by trade and saw that a lot of his customers were glazers. And he said, there's a need here. So he started designing machines to take the burden off of the worker. But another point, other than the safety factor that was just talked about, is an economic standpoint. You can be more efficient with the crews that you have. Sending less people to the job to do a job that would take 5 or 6 people, you may send 2 to 3 people. So the machine would pay for itself over the period of time that you're saving on manpower.
Okay, Jerry. Pass the.
Thanks, Chip. All right, I'm Jerry Nudi, Ergo Robotic Solutions, and I think it'd be brilliant for any glaziers or manufacturers to go visit all of the equipment booths and see what the capabilities are of the machines, because it can actually help any business reach their potential, or at least see what their potential could be. Perhaps they're a smaller business that wants to grow, and it just the whole idea of seeing a piece of equipment that can help them grow and handle bigger projects, maybe even something they didn't even realize that was available, or realize how much they could handle with it. So that's about it.
Great. Well, obviously safety, safety and the health and welfare of all of our coworkers, our employees, are really, really important, and that's the big thing that you guys do. And now, one of the things that kind of plays into it is that the industry is changing with regards to there's more unitized. A lot more unitized, because again, it's a labor issue within the shop. There's also oversized. If you open up Glass Magazine, you see ads from various people touting the oversize. Oversize is growing, and with oversize comes handling. You have to handle that gigantic piece of glass. So I'm going to start with you, Chip, on this one, and then we'll go to Jerry, and then finish with Barry. With regards to these trends, oversized, unitized, how are you handling it? How are you dealing with it? It's obviously made your lives a little different. You have to change what you're doing.
Yeah, when I first started with Quattrolift, it was not that long ago. It was about 7 years ago, and some of our machines were carrying loads of 330, 440, pounds, and we've got machines that are, doing 1,800 pounds. So just in 7 years, our product line has innovated to follow the architects that are designing these larger pieces of glass, the manufacturers that are capable of handling these bigger pieces of glass. So yeah, I think these machineries that you see out here 5, 6 years ago, there might have been 3 or 4 manufacturers out here. Now there's, 10, there's a lot. So the industry is seeing that it's a smarter way to work, and it's a safer way to work. and it's a more efficient way to work. So the handling the large glass is just, you're going to see the machines designed to handle that. And like Jerry said, you make your way around to the various booths and see what the capabilities are. You're going to see the big monster machines out there. So,
Jerry? So basically, with the trends changing, oversized, unitized, how are you? How's the world changed for you with the machinery you make?
Okay. So first of all, what is oversized? What does that mean? At what point does what's size and then what's oversized?
Well, sure.
So,
I mean, back in the day, the biggest piece that you could probably do tempered-wise was maybe 84 by 154. Now,
right.
and people didn't want to do that, didn't want to handle that. They were scared to handle that. Now that's becoming more of a common size because tempering ovens are being put out that are, 130 by 204, 130 200s, and so on.
Yes.
300 inches. You've got imports coming in that could be 400 inches long.
Yes.
So 50 square foot and bigger overall units, very heavy, very large.
So what we do is we are in many ways reactionary. We take a call from someone in need. Typically, unitized job would be it's a glazing contractor or a building envelope contractor, and they have a particular job that they're bidding or they just were awarded, and we take the conditions that are going to exist on the job site, look at the size, the dimensions, the weight, and what are the logistical situations, problems, barriers, how do we get around them, how do we handle it? Is there a problem with the weight, the floor of the building where it can only handle so much weight on the floor? Can we design a machine to spread that weight out? Do we have to handle it under hook, with a crane mounted unit? Is there an overhang on the building? There's so many different things. So we take the conditions of whatever it is. The size of it is one of the items, and the weight of it is a big one.
Sure, great. And Barry, your thoughts?
Actually, my first thought is that Jerry's question is really very legitimate. Every year at every show, we have people come by and they look at our machines, which we usually bring smaller machines to the show, and they have 700-pound capacity, and we have people say, "Oh, I can't wait till I'm grow enough to lift that big of glass." So for some people, 700 pounds is a lot of weight. So when you're talking about oversized glass, it is relative to everybody. But when you're talking about the unitized, things that we have to consider is, like Jerry said, sometimes people will call us and they'll say, do you have, will your lifter fit on every piece of glass that we're doing in this large project? And that project has hundreds of different sizes, and they end up sending us a packet full of drawings, and it can take an engineer 2 or 3 days to go through that packet and verify that either we have a standard that matches all those, or we don't, and we have to design something from scratch or adjust something we already have. Ideally, we'll be working with the architect, and the architect will look at what we have and do that qualification for us. But that's a big thing. There's also, if they're mullions, since these are unitized, and sometimes you have, you want to reduce the moment on the lifter, so you suck the pad up as close to the framework as you can, but then they put a mullion in there and all of a sudden it's in the way. So, things like that, and, the logistics that Jerry was talking about, you have to figure out if you can actually get these units on and off the truck, how you're going to put them on the truck to get them to and from the job site, things like that.
There's a ton of questions there, obviously. You guys just brought up a ton of questions, and just to reiterate, what has been set up there. If you're interested in this sort of equipment, this is an excellent show to do it. You can visit the booths of these three gentlemen. You can visit their booths that have this sort of equipment. This is the show to do it, obviously, and get a feel. So I'll start with you on this one, Jerry. If I've started a glass company, let's say I've started a glass company, and I want to go ahead and I want to buy a piece of your equipment, or Chip a piece of your equipment, and Barry same thing. How do you handle somebody like me? Because there's probably a lot of people here that are finally getting ready to get into this sort of thing. How do you handle somebody who's new to this?
All right, someone who's new to it, which is actually a lot of the people that are buying or renting equipment from us. They have a need, and they perhaps have seen what we have online. Perhaps they've seen it, another contractor using, our machine on a job, and they look us up online, find us, call us. I basically start off I ask them a lot of questions. I have to find out which unit might be the best suited for them, perhaps on this job, and sometimes it's like thinking ahead, what other jobs might you do? Perhaps, maybe, is it the right size for you, or perhaps you need a bigger size unit? So what are the dimensions? This is very important to have the dimensions of the glass. Is it a unitized system, IGU, just glass, the weight, the dimensions, and what are they doing it with it? Reaching it from the floor, or is it multi-story? They need it to get it from the air. That's another big one.
Chip?
I start out by asking what weight they typically want to lift and say, okay, go to your typical maximum, because you don't want to buy a machine that you're going to overload from the beginning. Have some room to grow. So I start with the weight. I start with the dimensions of the glass. That's very important. But additionally, I'll ask, how are you installing it? Are you using this in a shop situation? So we have shop machines, or are you using it in the field? Do you need to deal with barriers in the field, such as extension cords or screws that are going to get caught in your wheels? So those are the few questions that I'll start out with, and then to get a feel for the kind of work that the customer does. Are they a unitizer? Are they a storefront guy? Are they a shower door guy? So we have different machines that cover that whole gamut, and you want to steer them in the right direction. And once I eliminate 90% of the machines, I can steer him and answer those questions to specifically what he's looking for.
And before, has this show been, Jerry mentioned a lot of people that have come through the booth are people first timers. How about that for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is good. You see new people every year, and you see some buys that you've seen in the past, have bought some machines, come by and say hi. But when I see somebody new, one of the things that I do is educate them on what's out there and be honest with them and say, no, this is not going to work what you think it's going to do. And the last thing you want to do is to sell somebody a piece of equipment that they're not going to use. I would not want to do that. I'm sure these guys wouldn't want to do that either. Sure.
And so Barry, the two questions for you then. The initial question of how do you handle that first timer? How you take them through, and obviously your product line is a little different than these gentlemen as well. But how do you take that first timer through? And with you being somebody who, like these two gentlemen, have been at the show for many years, are you running into a lot of first timers?
Well, we don't really have a lot of people come by the booth that don't know who we are. And, I don't mean that to sound the way it sounds.
You're proud of your marketing, aren't you? Yeah,
but
that.
We've been around for 50 years,
Okay.
So
I have to give
most
you a
people
little
in this
act.
industry at least have heard of us, But as far as first timers, and we're talking about larger glass, not many people are going to just out the gate, hey, I bought a glass company and I want to install this job, I want to do this job, and it's got 3,000-pound window walls, or curtain walls, excuse me. So you're not really going to run into that first timer type thing, but our approach is the same as the other two guys. We actually have a form that we ask them to fill out, but generally, if they're calling us, we'll just fill it out over the phone, and as you go through it, are you working in shop? Are you doing installation? What kind of work are you actually doing? What are the sizes, max, min, and average? What are your weights? You just have to go down that list and kind of check the boxes. And when you get to the end, usually there's, one or two, and you say, okay, this is what we have that'll meet all your qualifications. These are the pros and cons of all of them. And quite frankly, there are going to be times where we'll say, yeah, we can do that, but if you go down to Ergo Robotics, they have something that's off the shelf, or Quattro Lifts has something off the shelf, and it'll be cheaper for you. And you just have to go through that qualification process.
Sure. No, that's great. Now, Chip, things have obviously evolved in the last several years. What are some of the biggest challenges that glazers are coming to you with Is it some of the things that you guys have mentioned before, the oversized, the unitized, or the weights, or are there other things that they're struggling with and the challenges that you guys have to solve?
Well, the most difficult thing that I find in the show is somebody comes to me with a specific job and a specific thing that they need to do and achieve. Maybe they're lifting over a knee wall, they need to lift it so high, or maybe they need to articulate the glass or the window out the opening from a third story and pull it back in because they've got some exterior glaze situation. So the individual job in going and asking the right questions to get so that I can get them to the right machine is very important. And that's the most challenging part for me, because describing in different languages of, okay, so here's what I'm trying to do with it. And that typically is my most difficult part, is trying to find out what their specific need is.
How about you, Barry?
The question was, what's most difficult?
Yeah, the most difficult thing that they're facing these days.
Well, when you're talking about larger glass, it usually is scheduling. You do have the initial step of figuring out what they need and if everything will fit there, but that takes some time. And then if it ends up that they have to have something designed from scratch, that can take 12 weeks just to design, and then you got to get it there, and get all the logistics of everybody and everything on site at the same time while the crane is available. And if you've been on a job site, sometimes they have one crane and there's 3 different crews sharing it, and so they're scheduling their time on that crane, and you just got to get all the logistics to fall into place. So the most difficult thing is to plan far enough ahead that you've made Murphy your best friend, and anything that goes wrong, you have a solution for.
Wonderful. And Jerry, biggest challenges you're running into?
Yeah, the biggest challenges are, I find, and have been right along, as we run into something different or bigger or larger than what we have a piece of equipment already designed for, then the biggest challenge is trying to figure out how can we accomplish this with this type of a unit or this type of unit. Try to figure out what's best for that customer, what maybe they'd be able to reuse in the future and not have it just be one-time expense for them for one job. That's probably the biggest.
Well, that brings up a question: the expense, the one-time expense, and so on. How do you push somebody over the hump of always renting versus finally making the investment into the products that you gentlemen make? What's the push there? I mean, obviously it makes sense, but I mean, how do you get them over the hump from renting to finally buying one of your pieces, Jerry?
Yeah, so that I'll use a couple exact examples. It's different every time. We will offer someone an opportunity to rent and apply the very beginning rental portion of the rental towards the purchase, allowing them to rent the machine, but also not have that money be thrown away. It could go toward the purchase, as though they had just bought it from the beginning. That's one of the things we do, and we find that within the first 30 days, they're going to know. It's like if you need one of our machines, you will know it. That's pretty well one of the things that I'll say to people. If you need us, you'll know it, and that's what happens. So they'll try renting it, and another is, okay, he knows he needs it. He thought his job was only going to last so long, but sometimes circumstances out of his control drag the job out. Now he knows that he's just going to keep renting this thing for a long time. He knows he needs to buy it for economic reasons.
Sure. Chip, same thing with you, or different?
No, very, very similar. We'll get questions of, how much does your machine cost? We're going to put this into our bid. If we're the successful bidder, then we're going to buy your machine. So you get a little bit of that. But the labor savings with these equipment, it's going to see a lot of times in the very first job. So a lot of people will end up, instead of renting, they'll maybe rent to try, like Jerry said. But what will happen is you'll rent these machines just like you've rented a lot of other equipment outside of our trade. You may have rented a GLG for years, and now all of a sudden you own one, but because you saw the economics of that. And so the glass handling equipment is the same thing. sooner or later you're going to realize you're pouring more money into rent, and you might as well just own it. Or you might not. You might only do one job, and I'll never lift anything that big again. And if you want to rent it, that's fine.
And Barry?
Well, pushing people over the hump isn't really in our corporate culture. We honestly don't sell direct. So if you want to buy a product, one of our lifters, we'll send you to one of our distributors, and you can deal with them. If you want to rent from us forever, that's fine. And actually, sometimes some of our distributors have something in stock that they'll rent you that's even closer, and we'll send you that way. We want you to make the choice that's best for you, and it does come down to what these guys both said, is that most people they'll rent it one or two times and make the decision if it's going to be in their future that they need that, if it's an economically feasible decision to make, and we just let them make that decision.
Gotcha. And I'll keep it with you right now, Barry. The trends. I mean, you've been in business how long?
A little over 50 years.
Okay, a little over 50 years. You've done a lot with building, building your business, and it's changed a lot, obviously. What's coming down the pike? What's the next big trend?
Well, for us, we like to say it's the IntelliGrip technology, for Wood's Power Grip, because that's something we've spent the last couple of years developing. And if you come by our booth, we'll show you what it is. But it's really heavily based on safety, and a constant monitoring of vacuum levels and the battery level and everything to make sure that your system is working properly at all times, and letting you know before there's a problem, not just waiting until you've reached a critical vacuum level and restarting, or anything that might need attention. It's going to let you know ahead of time. A couple other things that we've noticed is, with the larger units, counterbalancers are coming into. 15 years ago, counterbalancers were only used for airport towers, but now with these larger units, you almost need them to get the proper hang angle of some of those really big pieces of glass or curtain walls. And with those massive units, radio remote controls. 20 years ago when remote controls first came out on the market, they were just like your VCR, that has the infrared, and it was just apply and release. And now it's moving the counterbalance back and forth. It's rotating, it's tilting, and doing everything that you would do if you could actually reach the machine itself. But it's just way up in the air because the glass is so big.
Wow. Chip?
Mostly everything he just said was what I would say. The machines that we're seeing oversized is key, because now we're innovating and we're making larger machines and handling things safely. We have online training of all of our videos. It's important that you train your employees on how to properly use the machine. But yeah, I don't want to repeat everything he just said, but it was pretty good.
And Jerry, new technology trends with yours.
New technology trends. It just pretty well relates to, well, you know what? I want to say bigger and going higher, but there's a couple of items. One that I've noticed or have picked up in the last year is that we have a unit that mounts on an outdoor forklift, so you can lift like 50-some feet up into the air without having a crane. That's one big technology, very helpful and much less expensive than paying a daily use on a crane. And another is taller machines. So we have a freestanding, a mobile glass articulating unit that goes 26 foot high and handles 2,000 pounds, and that's been a pretty popular machine as well. So I see people want to go higher with the bigger glass and try to cut the costs out that are not necessary and not beneficial.
Sure. And so we've got about 5 minutes left, and so to wrap things up, let's just talk about anything else that we may have missed. So basically, I'll start with you, Chip. If we have a scenario where somebody wants to learn more, they want to know more about what you do, or they want to get into this. I mean, what have we missed here? What do you want to cover? You've got a group of people here who will probably hit you up afterwards with some questions. But what would you like to cover?
Well, I think the most important thing to do if you're thinking about buying a piece of equipment is to go look at it, touch it, ask a lot of questions, be specific with what your needs for that machine are. Because the more specific you need, then we're going to steer you towards the best machine. We all have different models, and they're all designed to do something slightly different. And there's a reason, that they're designed that way, because it's going to work better this way on this particular project, and this would do better. And then think about the long-term use of that machine. If you're buying a unique machine for just one job, do we have another machine that would do that job plus do something else later? So I would think that would, if I was on the fence of buying a machine, that's what I would do, is visit all the booths. Where can you go see all the booths in one spot in one day? Take advantage of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Barry, your thoughts? Chip, you want to pass the mic? Barry, your closing thoughts?
For us, I think the main theme would be plan ahead. And similar to what Chip just said, even if you're thinking about buying something, make sure you know where to store it once that job is done.
Is that an issue? Does that become an issue that if somebody buys it and then they don't know where to store it?
When you're talking about a unit that can lift 4,000 pounds, it's actually pretty big. I thought that was my microphone doing that.
Well, we've got the band about starting to play, so we can start dancing here a little bit. There's a celebration going on. I don't want to jump the end of this, but it is getting a little difficult to hear. Do you have anything else to add to that?
Not really. I would say that Chip kind of, on the last question, he just touched on something that we hadn't even thought about, but the technology, online training, online video conferencing and all that is becoming more and more important. And I think you touched on it, but it's worth mentioning.
And, well, we got the money machine going behind us. We got the band going behind us. Jerry, do you have anything else to add here?
I don't have any. Well, just one thing. Stop lifting heavy glass by hand.
Yes.
Get a machine.
Yeah, stop lifting. Buy a machine. Go visit these guys. Go visit the other guys. Thank you so much for coming. Guys, thank you so much.